and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. Very happy to be with you. We are here on a Friday, spending some time together to talk about books and listen to an author talk about books. Before we get to that, though, of course, as always, I would like to invite you to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you're either listening to or watching the episode on. That is incredibly helpful, gets the podcast out to more readers, gets more eyes and ears on the podcast, and really does help. If you'd like to help the podcast and the network as a whole in another way, in a monetary way, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. Think of it as just, like I said, helping the podcast, helping the network. If you want to think about it as helping me with my reading indulgences and habits, then that's great too. But all of the support that you give is always greatly appreciated, whether that is donating, leaving a tip, however you want to look at it, or liking, following, subscribing, sharing, doing all those wonderful things helps get this podcast out to more readers and is, as I always say, and will continue to say, greatly appreciated. So I hope you've had a good week. I am still playing catch up, and that is okay as I work on getting all of my already recorded interviews. And I've got another 2 coming up this weekend that I'm excited about, but I'm happy to bring you interviews, and I just need to get them out to you. But this has been a pretty good week. It's been not hot here, but warmer than it has been. I think mostly because it's been more humid than it usually is this time of year. So I've done a lot of walking this week, which has been great. I walked, I went to go run some errands the other day. It was about almost 7 miles round trip, and that was great. It wasn't that hot, but I was walking, probably at the wrong time of day to be walking, but I needed to get them done before things closed, and it was fine while I was walking, and then I got to my first spot and I was just drenched in sweat, and then finished that errand and started walking and did my other errands and walked home, and I was fine the rest of the time. I wasn't hot, but it was, well, pretty sure that there were hormones involved in that moment of it was interesting. If you know, you know. But it was a good walk, and I got some good exercise. And then I have done some other walks this week as well. So that's good. Hopefully my husband and I will be walking again tomorrow. There is a festival here. I've talked about it before. If you've listened at all regularly, you might have heard me talk about the Black and White Festival in our town, which is always a lot of fun. It happens one day each year in June, and it's a lot of music and a lot of people, and our little tiny town can go from, it's like 5,000 in the winter, like 20,000 in the summer because of tourism, and then this makes it swell to, I don't know, like 50,000? Maybe that's, I'm not, something around there. I'd have to look up the exact number, but that's a pretty crazy difference. And it is a lot of fun, but everyone is supposed to wear black and white, hence the name. And as always, it annoys me when people don't wear the right color, and I'm like, you're ruining the aesthetic. So I have to say it every year because it pops into my head every year. I don't say it to people. No. I'm not that rude. I just, in my head, I'm like, you're ruining the aesthetic. Anyway, neither here nor there. Let's talk about books, shall we? As I mentioned at the end of the last episode, I have a returning author today. Mark Stevens is joining me again to talk about Two Truths and a Lie. This is the sequel, the third in a 3-book series that started with the first book, No Lie Lasts Forever. That's the book he came to talk to me about last time he was on, of course, and I will link that episode with this one. So if you want to go back and listen to or watch that episode, you can. In the meantime, Two Truths and a Lie. In a taut, haunting follow-up to No Lie Lasts Forever, reporter Flynn Martin gets ensnared in a copycat killer's game where winning means solving a crime, and losing could cost her everything. Lambasted for a tragedy caught live on camera, then lauded for her help capturing the elusive PDQ, a serial killer, Flynn Martin's career has reached new heights. But now the TV journalist and mother has much further to fall, and someone wants to push her over the edge. PDQ is behind bars for life and then some, but someone on the outside has picked up the killer's mantle. Flynn is neck deep in an investigation when the copycat emerges, targeting her sources and delivering cryptic messages. It's clear that Flynn's stories are getting deadlier. This one proves no exception. A family of 4 has gone missing, leaving behind ties to New Hope Church, more tangled than they appear. The dangerous web rivals the threat in Flynn's personal life, and it's up to her to unravel each knot. Scandal, conspiracy, murder. Flynn hardly knows where to begin, and if her stalker has their way, she might not live to see the end. And so that is the description, of Two Truths and a Lie. As I said, and as you heard in that description, it is the follow-up to No Lie Lasts Forever. In that book, we met Flynn, and she was involved in tracking down PDQ, a serial killer, and Mark's going to talk about this as well, but got involved in that case in an interesting way, maybe not a way that she expected to get involved with it. And it seemed like it was wrapped up pretty well at the end of the last book, but there were a few things that were left unresolved, and now in this book, even though PDQ is behind bars, things start happening. She starts getting messages again, like she was getting from the serial killer in the first book. And of course, she checks. She tries to figure out what is going on. She's moved. Her and her son have moved, so they're in a much more secure location, but she's still getting messages. She doesn't know why. Plus, there's this investigation that she is involved in, the family that has gone missing, what's happened to them. Again, you'll hear more about this when Mark talks about it, but there's always lots of layers to books like this. That's why there's suspense. You are left guessing. You're trying to figure things out, of course. But let's go ahead now and let Mark talk about the book. Once again, the first one is called No Lie Lasts Forever. The second one that we're talking more about today is Two Truths and a Lie. The author is Mark Stevens. Hi, Mark. Welcome back to the podcast.
Sarah, great to see you. Thanks for having me back on.
I'm glad to have you. I'm excited to talk about the second book in the series that you came to talk about the first time you were here. This one's called Two Truths and a Lie. Like we did before, if you would take just a minute to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, Mark Stevens. I live in Mancos, Colorado, which is in far southwest Colorado by Mesa Verde National Park between Durango and Cortez. We've been here my wife and I, about 7 years after uh, 3 or 4 decades in the Denver metro area, and just loving the rural world and rural lifestyle, fresh air, no traffic. That's my motto.
Yeah.
And we found a very artsy, cool community in Mancos down here with just so much going on. But yeah, I've been a former reporter. I spent almost 20 years as a reporter, both in television news and print media. And then I spent about 20 years on the other side of the fence as a public relations person, mostly working for school districts like Denver Public Schools and the State Department of Education. Um, and then I had my own freelance PR business for a while, working with nonprofit organizations and education related organizations, kind of trying to help folks that are doing good things in the world, try to help them get their story out. But the main overriding thing about me is I'm the son of 2 librarians, grew up in a house of books and ideas in Massachusetts. Um, and it was just great to grow up in that world with, um, parents who believed in learning and discussing, and they were
Mm-hmm.
open to new things, and just interesting people who were very curious about the world.
Yeah, I agree. I only had one parent as a librarian, but still, I got to read whatever I wanted, and lived next door to the town library. It was awesome.
That's great.
Um,
Yep. That boy, being that close to a library would be scary for me.
it was a very small
Feed that
town, so you
addiction.
were never far, but we lived right next door.
Wow. Wow.
Um,
Yep. I
so this
I
is
can
the
still
second.
remember.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I can still remember going to my town library as a kid, and my mother really had to drag me out of there because it was just so cool to just explore the stacks,
Yeah.
just see what you
Yes.
could find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that too. Just walk up and down and look and see what book
Yeah.
caught your eye.
Yep.
So I probably read things I shouldn't have because things caught my eye, but I mean, I don't think it hurt me any.
Right. Yeah.
This is the second in what you said last time is probably a trilogy. So let's start with an overview of the series itself for people who maybe haven't read the first one.
Sure. Yeah, the series features a Denver-based veteran female television reporter. She's probably 20 years into her career. And in the first book, very early on in the story, partly due to her pride and just thinking she knows what she's doing as a reporter, she makes a mistake. She gets put in the middle of a hostage-taking situation at a convenience store, and the cops have asked her to be the go-between with the hostage taker, and she thinks in her own mind that she knows how to handle this. The cops are telling her what to do. It's a very high-pressure, high-stakes moment, and she follows her own instincts, and at least as far as the police are concerned, makes a mistake, and one of the hostages is killed. So the station puts her out in the first book in No Lie Lasts Forever. They put her out on the street. At least they take her off air. She's not formally suspended, but it's just too much PR publicity and just all the publicity damage from that they take her off the air. So she's has her favorite job is taken away from her, at least temporarily. At the same time, a retired serial killer, a guy who has done his evil deeds about 15 years prior to the events in No Lie Lasts Forever, a guy who wants to go down in history as having gotten away with what he did, a guy who's now working at the State Department of Education and Human Resources and just going about his business and trying to maintain his reputation to himself, at least. Uh, all of a sudden, there's a brand new case that looks exactly like he is back in action. It looks like he has decided to come back into the criminal world and as back terrorizing Denver. Well, he doesn't like this at all. He does not like the fact that there's a new case. He's afraid that the police will stir up all the old cases and start looking at all the old evidence. So he reaches out to her, knowing that she's been wounded and she's out on the street. And he says to her, basically, I can help you get your job back, and you can help me get my reputation back because I can help you ask the right questions to figure out who actually is behind this new case. So it's a case of mutual redemption, each helping each other to get their reputations back. The main first part of the book is she doesn't believe that there's any way that this guy who's contacting her surreptitiously through encrypted messages, there's no way it's him. So she kind of ignores the messages at first, but then he finds a very convincing way to prove to her that it's him. So that's the setup of the first book.
Now, you've heard Mark give you a little bit more information about that first book, which of course sets up the series as a whole, the trilogy as a whole, because there are 3 books in this series. We're going to go ahead and take our first break of this episode. When we come back, we'll be talking more about how this went from a standalone book to a trilogy and what is happening in book 2. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to work, cause my boss is a jerk, and I'm not even that paid. I need a change in my life, cause I don't feel alive, and there's nothing that makes me happy. Hold my beer for a minute, I'm about to quit my job, cash in for a ticket. I'm going on a trip and I don't plan to visit. I'm gonna stay there till I feel like I'm winning, and this is just the beginning. I need a big change, help me feel like living. I need a big swing, home runs I'm hitting, and I'll never look back, moving on till I get it all. And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be? And do you believe you can do anything?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Mark Stevens. As we get into this second segment, it's your second and final reminder that you can go to gsmcpodcast.net to help not only the podcast, but the network as a whole by making a donation of some sort and helping to support this podcast in more ways than you already do, because every bit of support that you give and have given throughout the course of this podcast life have been greatly appreciated. Liking, following, subscribing, sharing, leaving reviews. But if you would like to help in a monetary fashion, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. And thank you once again for your support. Before the break, you got an overview from Mark on No Lie Lasts Forever, and he is now segueing into talking about the second book, the premise of the second book, and what is happening now in Flynn's life. So let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Mark. I remember you saying that initially you thought the first book would be a standalone, and then it evolved. So it does wrap up in a lot of ways at the end of the first book. So yeah, give us a glimpse into the second without giving too much away.
Right, right. Well, you're right. I wrote the No Lie Lasts Forever as a standalone. The editor who bought it said, no, this I'd like a really tight three book arc. Make it a trilogy. We'll be done after three. It's not going to be more than that. Figure it out. And so I had to kind of go into book one and just kind of make a few little rips in the fabric, just create a few little clues that this might keep going. And so book two, because she's sort of not doing her job in book one, she's not on air. She's doing a lot of poking around, but she's not reporting. In book two, I wanted to see her report, and I wanted to see her, how she goes about her job. So I gave her in book two a story to cover, which is the disappearance of a family, of a suburban family in a beautiful house that just basically appears that they headed off for vacation, but they never landed at their destination. Father, mother, and two children, a boy and a girl, who vanish. And of course, it's a major story, and she is one of the veteran reporters in Denver and gets to play a role in moving that story forward. So I really wanted to see her report, and that becomes the sort of the major plot of Two Truths and a Lie. But at the same time, she starts getting messages. The first one comes home in her son's backpack from school, which is very weird and alarming, to say the least, when she is going through her son's stuff from school and finds a message to her that sounds exactly like the way the antagonist, the serial killer in book one, used to message her. So she is deeply alarmed, and she knows for a fact, as do all the people around her, that our bad guy from book one, PDQ, he went by the nickname PDQ. Harry Kugel is his real name. Has been sent off to prison. The book, Two Truths and a Lie, starts with a courtroom scene where he is going to be behind bars for many lifetimes to come. And there's no way it's him, but the question is, how is it him? So that's the two strands of Two Truths and a Lie.
Yeah. Flynn, as our protagonist, she's very determined, and her determination is a strength, and sometimes the flip side, it sometimes gets her in trouble. So talk about writing this very strong, very determined character, and how she kind of she's evolving, and what her story arc. Talk about that arc.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, first of all. And I really think it's interesting. Determination should be a value, a good positive value for most of us when we go about our work. And I think I've known, and I've worked alongside many reporters who just never gave up. They were relentless. But there is a point where, you can not go too far, but your zeal, I guess, gets you in trouble. And sometimes that's just how you approach things, how you approach relationships as you go about poking around. I think that she is the other major thing about Flynn, and it's a key relationship in the book, is that she is the daughter of a newspaper reporter, and now he's an independent journalist. He's retired from the newspaper in Denver and does his own journalism, but is known for his digging, for his investigative work, simply by going through documents, through finding stories that are in government reports, and then turning those into stories by asking the people involved. And she's living under this shadow. He
Hmm.
is a legend in the Denver community, and she's in a business that is more focused on looks and catchy video that's
Hmm.
focused on really just if it's something that car crashes and things that are kind of shiny objects in the
Yeah.
journalism world. Of course, there's plenty of good television journalists out there doing great things, but for the most part, TV is down to about 35-second stories, and it's just very fast moving.
Yeah.
So she's fighting this sort of issue with her father, just in terms of her reputation and wanting to show that she can do good things with her medium as well as her father did with his. And so she does run into situations where her pride is a little bit too much on her sleeve, and she's having to, um, back her way out of situations where she's been a little too zealous, I guess I'd
Hmm.
say.
Yeah. I feel like it sometimes gives her tunnel vision, like her focus just narrows to the point where she's not always seeing the things around her. Um,
Very good. Well put. Well put.
um, so she's already survived quite a bit. I mean, there's trauma in the first book, of course, and you were writing that as a standalone. So how do you go about writing now two more books and making sure that Flynn is still evolving? She's going through new circumstances without just repeating that same emotional journey.
Yeah. Well, I think the key is to kind of focus on, creating new situations and bringing new characters to the page that she can, provide new relationships with her. And so readers can triangulate her and get to know her in different ways. Um, and I've got to tell my dog to no.
He just wants to be part of the
Uh,
video, or she.
usually he's sleeping at this point. Um, so just giving her new relationships. She meets a new guy in Two Truths and a Lie. She's got a new relationship with him. He creates, I think, some interesting opportunities for her to show a little bit of a softer side, and to show that she can be interested. She's got a young son, a middle school son, who she is very protective of, and we see the motherly instincts there. And she's got a good relationship with her ex, her son's father. Um, but I think adding the possibility of a new boyfriend gives her a chance to again show her softer side, although we don't really know him all that well until later on in the book, later on in Two Truths and a Lie. But getting her back in her job alone in Two Truths and a Lie, and just seeing her work as a reporter in all her work relationships was the additional way I thought we could kind of round her out.
Hmm. Um, how do you go about keeping readers surprised or engaged, but also, as you're just talking about with Flynn, keeping that emotional center, the emotional core of the story centered?
Yeah, I'm not sure I know how to articulate the answer. Uh, it's the how question of writing. The more I write, I feel like the less I know. It
Mm.
sounds strange. I used to do a lot of blogging and kind of interviews. I hosted a podcast for Rocky Mountain fiction writers for years. I did 400 some episodes for them, interviewing writers who have techniques and ideas. I don't mean to go down I don't mean to be avoiding your question, but the the older I get, the more I write, I feel like the less I know. My One of the things I try to do now is just think about the mess that our lives really
Mm.
are. How
Mm.
how we think that we are in control. We think we have it all down. We think we know what's going to happen. It's a big kind of illusion to us that day to day, in our personal lives, in our community, in our state, in the country, whatever it might be, there's just so much chaos and violence is ever present. So I think I try to just, try to capture that for Flynn, the variety of things that she's going to encounter and just not keep it too A to B to C linear, just really create kind of if I'm being surprised and if I feel like Flynn is being surprised, then I feel like the reader's going to be surprised.
Hmm.
If it's a little too tightly outlined for me, and too I don't know, just where there's almost a logic to it, or you can see in the reader's head, you can see the outline on the wall of these building blocks and a clear act one, act two, act three. I don't really go for that. I try to keep it all kind of messy. That's
Hmm.
just me. So I don't know.
No, I can, I
It's a
mean, I
kind of a
can,
weird answer.
no, I can see that though, because I mean, that's our lives are messy. They're not, we think they're linear because in some ways they are, years go forward, but so I find it really interesting. Other authors have said this as well, similar things to this, but Mark said that if he, as the author, is being surprised, and if Flynn, as the main character, is being surprised, then hopefully chances are good that we, as the readers, will also be surprised. That he doesn't always have everything mapped out completely. So he does not always know exactly where everything is going. But as he's writing, then, now that's gonna happen. So maybe as he's figuring it out, maybe we aren't figuring it out as the reader. You never know. But we're going to go ahead and take our second break of this episode. When we come back, we're talking more about Flynn as the main character, the protagonist, but how she, of course, is at the center of this story. And then there are all of these other relationships surrounding her as she tries to go through her cases, figure things out. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Mark Stevens. Before the break, Mark was talking about writing without a really detailed, specific outline and where that can lead him as the author, Flynn as the main character, and us as readers. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Mark. And I feel like when I think about Flynn as the center of the story, you've got her and this story, the two stories in this case, the one she's working on as a reporter, the one that she's involved in, but then you've got these spokes that go out to the different relationships in her life. And that
Right.
can be grounding, that can be confusing, like relationships are helpful and not helpful all at the same time.
Right. And how much chaos do we choose to bring into our lives? How much do we, um, I think just even taking on this new boyfriend is a kind of she's trying to decide.
Hmm.
And, just some people think I've seen some comments from readers that she makes some mistakes and she's not as smart as she should be. Well, hello. I mean, who is
Right.
perfect? Thank God she makes some mistakes.
Yeah.
Where's there is no clear reporter handbook and just guidelines. It's not like you're in a lab building a chip and here's how you put it together. This is life. You're bouncing around all these different things. You're trying to read people. You're trying to figure out if you've got the right information. At one point, she is kind of enticed back to the neighborhood where the news conference was held to announce all the details with this family disappearing. And one of the notes that she gets uh, from this new lurker is found on her dashboard in her car when she comes back to her car from the news conference. And she's desperately trying to figure out if there's any video or anybody saw the person who
Mm-hmm.
left the note in her car to figure out who this new copycat person might be.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets a call and invited back out to the neighborhood by somebody who thinks that she can help her. And when she gets there, the parent of this kid who might have information just basically starts yelling at her because she's a reporter and she doesn't trust her.
Yeah.
And so is that a mistake to go back out and try to follow up that particular thing? And it's a dead end. But I think it's the reality of life.
Yeah, yeah, and you said there's not a handbook, and it made me think, especially now with how fast things are changing in terms of technology and the way we receive information, that's got to be hard. That career has got to be hard to keep just keep up with.
Right. Absolutely. And one of the things as I've gone around doing book talks, in Denver and some other places, I've brought along the reporter at Channel 4 in Denver, a woman named Kelly Worthman, who's been a huge help to me in terms of just being a resource. Kelly's an outstanding, award-winning anchor in Denver, and she has been helpful to me to get all the behind the scenes details right. And when I do these talks with her, we talk about the environment that the reporters are in today and how much it's changed because of social media, because of how you used to be a reporter in a town and there maybe, I don't know, 100 maybe key reporters in Denver back 20, 30 years ago. Now everybody's a reporter.
Hmm.
Everybody thinks they've got the information. They have their cell phone. They can put it up on social media. They saw what they saw.
Yeah.
And they go on and, the official network affiliate TV stations and newspapers, they go on to those websites and start criticizing um, the reporting and the quality of the reporting and what they see
Yeah.
about what was captured by a video journalist or by a print reporter. Um, or they just take the clips and put them on their own social media channel and start harking about and criticizing what somebody put out there. It
Yeah.
is a whole different
Yeah.
ball of wax today. So, yeah.
And we could have a conversation that would not fit into the space of this podcast if we brought in AI. I mean, I can't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. No, no joke. Well, AI is going to play a little role in the third book. So,
Okay.
yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
Was there any particular research that stood out for you or surprised you for this book?
Well, the subplot, well, I guess I call it the driving force of Two Truths and a Lie, the story about the missing family. Just poking around uh, about a year ago because this all happened pretty quickly. I came across something that I've always kind of wondered about, but it was solid reporting by 60 Minutes, and it led me down into a just interesting world, and that has to do with churches and their finances. The
Mhm.
60 Minutes story went into the Mormon Church, the Church of Latter-day Saints, and the fact that they had a 100 billion, be like boy, $1 billion investment fund. And
Mhm.
that they had holding companies, they were bailing out insurance companies, they were dealing with office spaces, they were doing lots of regular corporate business things with a fund generated from tithing. And so I took that and thought that was kind of an interesting seed, and I started looking into different situations where there have been IRS claims against churches for running businesses. And I just thought, this is a really interesting kind of topic in terms of having a tax-free organization that can have these financial entanglements and financial dealings with businesses that are for profit. And there are some major cases in Colorado with giant churches. There's one in Lafayette, Colorado, that has, I think, about 16,000 visitors a week, a mega church that had owned a shopping center for 5 or 6 years. They bought it at one price, sold it years later at a much higher price. They had some church space in there, but they also had a bank, a coffee shop, And I just thought, well, it's interesting. I'm not necessarily a church guy. I was raised by a very religious family, but I thought, you go into church and give money in the hat and, support your church. And I think churches are supposed to kind of be helping the needy and helping the homeless and helping the hungry and helping the sick and some basic kind of things about Christianity, And here's this money being used in different ways. So I thought it was a worthy topic to kind of give to Flynn to poke around in. And I learned a lot doing it. So kind of a long answer, but that's where this one led me.
Yeah. You never know what rabbit hole you might find yourself going down. I can imagine. You mentioned AI is going to play a role in book 3. What can you say about book 3?
Well, it's going to wrap it all up, which is I think, excellent idea from the editor to just keep it tight, 3 books. So the two different, we know our antagonist from book 1 is in prison. So we know book 2 is a copycat. It can't possibly be him, but there's enough worry that he's somehow controlling or puppet strings to book 2. I mean, to the antagonist in book 2, and the antagonist in book 2, it is a cliffhanger. Some people are upset at the end of the very last page of book 2 that they have to wait for the third. But basically, they're 2 completely different stories from our antagonist, and I can just say that this will all tie back together, and the reason that Flynn kind of got, just going back to your earlier question about her character, the reason that she kind of, that pride and that kind of that quick moving world of TV journalism, that comes back to an even older story that she did years ago that sort of put in motion this little dominoes falling and tipping over, that a story that should have been more thoroughly reported, that ended up causing major harm to an individual and set in motion a series of events that she then needs to come to grips with, because one of the people who survived this unfortunate series of events, to use a cliche, comes back to exact revenge. And that's what we learn.
Okay. So, of course, it's always tricky to talk about suspense. I mean, any book without spoilers, but you especially don't want to give spoilers in suspense, and you don't want to give spoilers in the second book of a 3-book series. With, you don't want to give too much away. So it's always an interesting process of talking about that, but no spoilers. When we come back without spoilers, we'll be talking about, did anything change in the writing of book 2 that affected the outcome of what might happen in book 3? You are listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author Mark Stevens. Before the break, Mark was talking, without spoilers, about an incident from Flynn's past that has come back up in her present and is affecting the storyline. So something that maybe she didn't even realize was as important as it was, or as important as somebody else thought it was. And now it is literally coming back to haunt her. I guess maybe not literally, because it depends on how you define the word haunt, but it's coming back to haunt her present now and affect the storyline. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Mark. Was there anything that happened during the course of writing book 2 that changed book 3?
Yeah, I think just uncovering that situation I just described. I write without an outline. I try to write, well, the new way to get around saying you're a pantser, you're a seat of the pants writer. I've heard this at Thriller Fest a couple of weeks ago when I was in New York for Thriller Fest. It was a great conference, but somebody said, no, I'm not a pantser, I'm an organic writer. And I like that. I'm organic.
Yeah.
So just discovering that in book 2 and it's just sort of one of those things. I really believe if you write, if you know your characters and know the story, that all your questions about what developed behind the scenes will come around to you. So once I was halfway through Two Truths and a Lie, and it just sort of, I figured out what this situation might be, and I knew I could wrap it up in book 3.
Okay.
So I write my way into my questions, and I think when I write my way into my questions, those have to develop the answers. There has to be an answer, and sometimes those questions will linger in my head for days as I walk and think and keep writing, and then all of a sudden they're just there. So yeah.
Good. Do you have a title for the third book and an estimated release date?
It should be spring of 2027. I don't have a firm date. The idea was one book a year. So Two Truths and a Lie came out April 7th. I'm guessing May or June, maybe next year. I have a working title. You can tell me what you think. I haven't run it by my agent or my editor, but it's 5 Graves to the Truth.
Okay. That one makes me think.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
yeah. You'll have to ask your agent and your editor.
Yeah. Okay. I can tell it's not a winner, so
well,
maybe I have to go back.
no, I just have to think about it. Like, because in my head I was thinking Lie. I was expecting Lie to be in there, and then you threw me off with Truth.
Yeah, my weird thinking about this is the first book was No Lie Lasts Forever. The second book has both the word truth and lie in it.
Yeah.
So the third book has to only have the word truth in it. But
okay, I can see that progression.
That's my balance there. But
yeah, I can see that progression for sure.
Yeah.
Since I talked to you last, what have you been reading?
Well, I just read a great book. It's called The Zorg, Z-O-R-G. It's by a guy named Siddharth Kara, and it's a nonfiction book about a notorious, awful slave boat British slave boat that he follows it from, leaving England down the slave coast as they pick up slaves and overstuff their boat with slaves, and we get to know all the different crew. It's one of the most depressing books. My wife actually couldn't get through it because it's just so horrific, but the boat gets lost. The boat, they don't know where they are. They're running out of provisions, and they decide to start throwing slaves overboard. And but the story of what happened led to reinvigorated the abolitionist movement in Britain. And there was a big court case, and it gave fresh wind, so to speak, to the abolitionists in Britain who were decades ahead of the U.S. in terms of going after the issue around slavery.
Yeah.
And so it's a really thoughtful, well-researched book. It's very hard to read. And personally, given the efforts, I think, in Washington right now to try to, downplay the
Yeah.
violence of our past, I think it's never hurts to remind ourselves how we got here and, what we've done as a country,
Hmm.
just in the past. So I thought that was terrific. And then just a novel that I read recently was a book called Flesh won the Booker Prize by David, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, Szalay,
Mm.
and won the Booker Prize. It's a really amazing book. It just absolutely pulled me right along. The opening section is, you know, it's graphic and detailed, and very calm, clear writing. It is just there's understated writing all the way through, and it becomes this very long story of this youth who then grows up and has all these relationships and situations, but really compelling stuff. And I can see why it won the Booker Prize.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
For people who want to know more about the books, and you as an author, I know you have a website, so share that and any social media you're currently active on.
Yeah, thank you. WriterMarkStevens.com. TikTok is Mark54Stevens. Instagram is the same Mark54Stevens. And I do have a Facebook page, which is Writer Mark Stevens. So
Mhm.
you can just go to my website and follow all the links to my social media there.
Right. Yep. Thank you. And Mark, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you brought up during this time?
No, I just really appreciate all the folks out there who enjoy talking about books like yourself, and I appreciate all you do for authors and writers and helping them find more readers. So thank you
Mhm.
so much.
Well, and thank you so much for joining me again to talk about the second book. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks. Thank you again to Mark for joining me a second time to talk about the second in this 3-book series. It has been really interesting and fun to go with Flynn on this journey, not only to see what's happening next in the series, what's happening next in this story, especially since it felt like a lot of the story was wrapped up in the end of the first book, and now to find out that there's more layers being uncovered here in the second book, but also to experience Flynn as a character and her character arc, see where she's going next, what she's going to figure out about herself and her relationships and her career and just her life. So for me, that's always one of my favorite parts of especially series, is following that character and seeing how their arc progresses and how they as a character evolve. But this book does end a little abruptly in terms of like, oh, wait, no, what's going to, a little bit of a cliffhanger. So now we as the readers get to wait for book 3 to find out what happens next and what happens overall, because that one will conclude the 3-book series. So I'm looking forward to reading that 3rd book when it does come out, finding out how this is all going to wrap up. If you are a fan of suspense, if you're a fan of crime fiction, if you like that Flynn is a journalist, so there's the angle of her being a reporter and reporting on that and getting kind of a different insight and look into the life of a reporter, especially as we talked today, how that has changed and is continuing to evolve, how the news is reported in this day and age with technology and access to information. It's definitely evolving, especially even in definitely in my lifetime, but so much faster in the last 10, 20, 30 years, however you want to look at that. So that is an interesting element of this book or this series, and maybe something that you are interested in exploring. But if you're a fan of crime fiction, if you're a fan of suspense, then you will want to check out this series. You've got 2 of the 3 books, so you have a good start. If you haven't read either of them, then you have 2 to start with, or wait until the 3rd one comes out and read them as a whole. That's always hard. I never know. that's always the hard choice for me. Wait till the whole series is out and then read them when they come out, and then wait. Everyone has a different opinion on that, and I'm sure you do as well. But definitely check out this series as well as any of Mark's other books that you are interested in. And thank you again to Mark for joining me. Thank you, as always, for joining me for this episode. I hope you'll join me for the next episode, when it was fun for me, this interview, because it was something very different for me. I'm speaking to Jeff and Andy Crocker. They are married, they work together, and they create together. They write under Mr. and Mischief, as you see there next to me. This, though, Infinite Right Answers, this is a zine. And this was my first interview talking about a zine. So this was a first for me in a lot of ways, and it was a lot of fun for me. So this book is about being creative. It might be about being creative in terms of a writing project that you have, but it's about being creative in so many different areas, on so many different platforms, on so many different projects. So even if you're not a writer per se, if you are an artist of any kind, then this conversation might still be interesting for you. So I hope that you will join me for this conversation with Jeff and Andy on the next episode. In the meantime, as always, if you're a fan of this podcast, I do invite you to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to or watching the episode on. You can also leave a positive review. That is a really, really great way to engage the algorithm, get the podcast out to more readers. It is greatly appreciated by me and everyone here at the network, but a positive review does wonders. So thank you if you've already done it. Thank you in advance if you are planning on doing it. You can follow the podcast on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky. It's expanding. So trying to reach out to as many people as possible on whatever platform they might be on. Come find me on whatever platform you are on and tell me what you're reading. Hit me up with nosy questions. Answer my nosy questions. I love hearing from you. So thank you for following the podcast and engaging with me kind of by default. Hope you're having a great day. I hope you have something wonderful planned for this weekend, even if that is just sleep, or maybe it's something productive, or maybe it's something fun, or whatever it is. I hope that there's also time in whatever you're doing for you to get yourself lost in a good book. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time.